Stuart Hameroff, who is a professor of anesthesiology over at the University of Arizona in Tucson, who he's worked with Sir Roger Penrose, and I'm sure you're aware of that work they did on
Yeah.
quantum consciousness.
Yeah, right.
When they're talking about the microtubules and how consciousness sits in the brain with that unique signal that can be triangulated, which I'm sure that there's all sorts of looks at that on quantum communication networks. They said, okay, the EEG rhythms that are working your song of consciousness, that this is like Indian music, like anharmic vibrations. And it's also interesting that when you look at the different types of Buddhism, as people that have looked at Buddhism out there, they'll know that Buddhism, for example, that is the Chinese Buddhism, or you go into certain Korean Buddhism or something, you find these more pragmatic, basic types that are basically psychological and whatnot. It's like a precursor to psychology, just really good philosophy. When you go into the mystical Buddhism, you get that Mahayana Buddhism that all fled out of India with the Arhats and everyone. They went up into Tibet with all the secrets, and it's always mystified me when I look over there and I see that they have allegedly had the ability to levitate things with sound, or you see these pagodas that look like they could fly or something. It's kind of looks like that maybe those folks, his folks, had also influenced these branches of perhaps Buddhism and other areas on earth. I wanted to also ask you, if you don't mind, for everyone out there who's listening to the incredible things you're talking about, and they are incredible. I'm sure you've blown a lot of people's minds if they haven't heard this before. And every time you talk, you always have interesting things to say. I wanted to know, out of the footage we have out there on the internet that's been floating around for years, and some people say, hey, this is an ET. In your knowledge, what can you tell us about, let's say, the Skinny Bob footage that's out there? Where do you believe this came from?
The Skinny Bob is an actual video of an ET in a confinement facility out at Area 51. Actually, that particular video was done in his environment, in that ET's environment. And I don't recall whether it was the atmosphere or gravity that he needed something special, but it was an interview. It was an interview, the Skinny Bob. It's an actual ET. Not sure where he came from. And the other one is the Victor video. That's absolutely real. And in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the notation DNI. That's the video is being recorded by the Naval Intelligence, Department of Naval Intelligence, DNI, and what they had was they had this ET who was in an environment, and they were asking him specific questions, and this ET couldn't speak. He was relating through telepathy, as far as I know, or brain transfer thoughts, and they were asking, the Naval Intelligence people were asking about an underwater incident that happened. Something attacked a submarine or something. I don't recall exactly what it was. And the film that you see, that portion of the film was what the Naval Intelligence was filming. Now, there was a line of other agencies that were getting ready to go in there. The whole film is like 56 minutes, and you're only seeing a short portion, the Naval Intelligence portion of it. Somebody smuggled it out, as they did the Skinny Bob. I don't know who did it. I'm sure there was an investigation to figure out who did it, but they're real. I mean, absolutely. Now, if you look at the other, 51 minutes of it, there's different other agencies. You'll see AFIS, Air Force Intelligence Service, on the bottom, and DIA dash, and then XOP or something. So there was other agencies there, and the last one was the CIA, and they were asking him questions, or somebody, however they did that. I mean, I wasn't there. but I know that those are real.
I remember Bob Dean was looking at the footage at one point, and he said, "Yeah, that little guy is one of them." And people I've talked to that have had photographs of them and looked at them, he looks just like one of them, and they can identify with him over the years of the same interactions. There is a piece of footage out there that a friend of mine, Colin Wolford, out in England, has been obsessed with for years, researching the alien autopsy footage. And he wants me to ask you, what do you think about this? What have you heard? What do you know about it?
Well, let me go back a little bit. In the 80s, we had the somebody within Area 51 tried to smuggle out some films, and they were caught. The security, there was a way they could caught them, and we, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, actually investigated that. I didn't investigate it. I didn't work. Air Force Office of Special Investigations had a criminal investigations branch. I didn't work in that. I worked only in the counterintelligence arena. But they caught this guy, and one of the films that they had was an autopsy film. I didn't see the film, but another agent within the office saw it. And now jump ahead to the 90s, 97 or 96 or 7, or 5, whenever that came out. When I first saw that, I had a number of people within our group. I was working for Dr. Putoff at the time. People jumping out the windows saying, "Hey, they got this film. It's real." So our expert, who was also associated with the Institute for Advanced Studies, was Dr. Christopher Green. And most people know who Dr. Green is. He's been in the UFO, on the UFO scene for years. I worked with Dr. Green in counterespionage when he worked for the CIA. So I knew Dr. Green way, way back. One of the best covert agents, spoke Chinese and Russian. And anyways, everybody within our group went to him and said, "Hey, listen, what's this? Is this real?" And Kate looks at it and he said, "Yeah, it looks real. I mean, the procedures are real. I can't say that what those bodies were actual ETs or whether they were suffering from." And he named a few other illnesses that they could be suffering from. But then we had another doctor. I'm not going to name him, but he's pretty profound. He worked for the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, D.C., a pretty prestigious place where they did not only pathological research or autopsies on soldiers and that were suffering from strange illnesses or things like that, but they did a lot of research, human research. And he said, he's an older guy, and he'd been around a long time, and so he said everything on that film, all the medical equipment, the facilities, is factual. It would take a lot, probably a lot of money and a lot of effort to fake that.
Exactly.
Now, he could, but
exactly. And you would have to ask yourself, out of the different claims of people saying that they have ownership of it and they're saying that they pulled this thing off, just like the Skinny Bob footage, if you were to fake it, which would be very difficult, according to people that I've talked to with Hollywood experience, it doesn't make any sense why someone would put that amount of money, time, and effort just to have something out there for no reason. With that footage, before we leave it, also to jump back, did you not say the other night that you thought maybe the Skinny Bob had an Andromeda origin?
yes.
Do you remember years ago, there was a guy on the scene he's still around, but Alex Collier, he was talking in '94 that he had encountered these Andromedan beings that were bluish. Now, in that
So,
video, we're seeing a black and white Skinny Bob. Immediately in my mind, I thought, hey, could there have been a blue tint to him? That would be interesting. But also, when I was talking about this and the amazing, areas that you've talked about with these beings in videos and pictures, a friend of mine in California, Sean Ray Shell, who's been a contactee all his life, he also said that, in his opinion, what he saw in the Victor footage that you were talking about, that those look like the beings that he's seen his entire life. And he associated them with, he would call them hooties growing up. He'd associate them like hooting like an owl, that there was an owl connection. It was very interesting. He brought up this Turkish footage out there with the beings in the window of the craft. And that was another request I had to ask you what you thought about that footage.
well, that footage, when that made the scene, the intelligence community knew that was real because they had it before it was ever released. And they verified a lot of things. Number one, Turkish radar and American radar, NATO radar, because we had bases in Turkey, verified that there was, in fact, a craft, an unknown craft, flying in that particular area at that time. The pictures of the ETs in the window looking out, it resembled something else that was another incident that was photographed by a Air Force reconnaissance craft flying back in the late 80s, 87, 88, close to North Korea. They encountered almost the same thing, only this Air Force reconnaissance plane, that RC-135, is flying, and this craft is flying closer, and they had the same pictures. So that's why one connection to to why NSA and DIA figured it was real. It's real. I mean, what they were trying, and there's a particular person who was Wendell Stevens' really good friend. Of course, Wendell passed away some years ago, but he says he blew these up. He said they were trying to communicate. If you watched these things, if you really analyze these things, I think this guy was on George, maybe George Norrie or George Knapp, or maybe Art Bell, one of the two. But he was saying the same thing. They were trying to communicate, and I don't think that the people in the other side, us humans, were understanding that. I thought that was
it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
Rick, I think everybody watching this has just had their minds blown with these great revelations that you've given them. And it really asks a question, we have to ask it. When are we going to get the truth about extraterrestrials? Do you believe that this is going to be something that is going to come from our governments and our politicians down the road? Or is it something that folks like yourself are going to continue to give us? Or is it going to be something everybody just wakes up one day and we make a discovery out there, or we find out about it ourselves?
Well, I was sitting in a hotel room in Vegas some years ago with the late Senator Harry Reid. He had retired maybe a couple years just before this, maybe a year or so, and a person within the Defense Intelligence Agency, and we were sitting in a room, and I don't want to drop another name that was there, but who has a pretty good show on Coast to Coast. Anyways, this Harry Reid said, he made this statement about disclosure. He said, I've seen only a little, and he put his hand up. He said, I've only seen a little bit of it. But out of that little bit that I've seen, only about this much could ever be disclosed.
Wow, that's profound.